The critical disparity between the film Mary and the Netflix thing Mary and Conclave, the rather brilliant film with Ralph Fiennes, lies in the fundamental distinction between their respective approaches to material that's grounded in religious practice or belief. And while Conclave frames its fictional narrative within the plausibly human, historically rich, and institutionally specific drama of Vatican politics, Mary reduces its subject to an anachronistic and often trivialized spectacle burdened by poorly constructed fantasy and Gnostic apocrypha, which is a long way from both the plausible historical reality and indeed the Marian beliefs which have grown up since. Mary leans heavily on pseudo historical and speculative sources like the Proto-Evangelium of James, stripping its narrative of doctrinal resonance. And by contrast, Marian devotion in Catholicism and Orthodoxy emphasizes things like the devotion to Mary, in the Catholic Church, the Immaculate Conception, the Assumption, and so on, perpetual virginity, divine motherhood. And the film's decision to sensationalize these themes, Joseph as an action hero, Gabriel as a sex pest, Mary subjected to needless melodrama, betrays a lack of theological sensitivity and a desire to sensationalize the narrative in a way that may get a few Netflix viewers, or may attract controversy and therefore push the story push the film event into the headlines, but it's not sustainable in the narrative. This is the problem. The Mary attempts to modernize the depiction of the family of Christ, but it does so at the expense of reverence and relevance, and Gabriel, cloaked in bizarre theatrics, feels more like a horror trope than an angelic herald of salvation history, and the result is an aesthetic and a thematic confusion that alienates audiences familiar with the Marian devotions. And the Feast of the Immaculate Conception today in the Catholic Church, which of course will form the bedrock of the Feast of Immaculate Conception tomorrow, actually, which will form the bedrock of the opening of Notre Dame again on the eve of the feast, celebrates Mary as full of grace from conception, an essential prelude to her role in salvation. And this depth is absent in Mary, the film, which instead emphasizes superficial drama. Her Magnificat, this hymn of humility and joy, is omitted, erasing her profound spiritual awareness and witness. And the decision to cast Israeli actors in the Middle Eastern setting has also sparked conflict, distracting from the film's intended focus. So of course, I agree that all the characters would be Jewish. So that is a given. The concern is whether the characters would also be Palestinian, and that is a political decision. While Conclave also treads controversial waters, it does so thoroughly, tying its fictional heroes to broader questions of morality and institutional challenge. So why does Conclave triumph and Mary fail? Conclave succeeds in grounding its fictional twists, its intersex pope, its factional politics, in the meticulously researched procedures of a papal election. While liberties are taken, the film respects the gravity of the subject and engages audiences intellectually. The cardinals in Conclave are humanized, their ambitions and secrets reflective of the Church's complex reality. By contrast, Mary devolves into caricature, with characters like Joseph and Herod, no matter who they're played by, reduced to Hollywood tropes. Conclave boasts compelling storytelling and sharp performances, and a reverence for its setting, particularly in its depiction of the rituals like the burning of the ballots and the Room of Tears. In Mary, by contrast, poor dialogue, garish cinematography, inconsistent tone undermine its gravitas. Conclave invites reflection on the Church's enduring tensions, modernity versus tradition, secrecy versus transparency, while leaving space for faith. Mary, in contrast, offers little insight into Marian devotion or its significance across the centuries. And I'll come back to that in a later post today, because I think the Notre Dame event really demands that there is some theological reflection on this. And as theology is my subject, it would be remiss of me not to look into these things. I should point out, just before I sign off this one, that there is a failing in Conclave. That is, that if a cardinal were to be secretly nominated by a pope in pectore, in the heart, this is a feature of both this film Conclave and of the much earlier film and book The Shoes of the Fisherman. This cardinal, Cardinal Benitez, would not have been admitted to the conclave in the first place. The nomination would be considered suspect or null and void if it hadn't been publicly announced or documented by the Pope during his lifetime. As for the idea of the College of Cardinals being some sort of group of political factions, I think that's a perfectly reasonable supposition. And the film itself is remarkably accurate when it comes to all the various procedures as to whether or not a cardinal would father a child, whether another would attempt to buy the votes of the conclave. I'm sure those things have been past indelicacies and could easily be current ones. The issue of the cardinal who is discovered to be technically intersex, I think, this is known by only a few people. And should he have been ordained as a priest, should the person who ordained him, or should he himself have known at that time that he was technically intersex, then that would have been worthy of excommunication. But all of this was done without his full knowledge. So therefore, a technicality and an entertainment, but not in fact something that would be against canon law. And I don't think a trip to a secret clinic would necessarily sort that out in canon law, even if it were a problem. So it raises so many interesting features that I think it's worthy of speculation, worthy of seeing simply on the theological basis alone. But I can't say I'm as stimulated and as excited about the film, the Netflix thing, Mary. It's a lesser film, though I know it aspires to be so much greater. Mary collapses under the weight of its own pretensions, trading theological depth and narrative coherence for ill-conceived dramatics and fantasy. And Conclave, despite its own creative liberties, offers a thoughtful, visually engaging, narratively compelling experience that respects its material. For viewers looking for meaning and substance in religious cinema or television, Conclave is the worthier choice.